this wonderful collaboration. At the time, I was on the planning commission. I hadn't even thought about running for council. And I'd only gotten involved because I was trying to get a stop sign near my kids' school. People have been trying to get a stop sign for 20 years at Sirius and Hygeia. And so I had gone to council and I had invited the entire council to come with me on my son's unsafe route to school and look at the topography and, why we needed the stop sign. And Catherine Blakespeare had just been elected to the city council at the time, and she was the only one that showed up. And she said, Tasha, you should run for council. And I said, that's crazy. Can I just get in my stop sign? That's all I really wanted. And we mobilized the community. We worked very collaboratively together with the neighbors and the teachers and the staff, which is probably when we talk about leadership and caring for our community and all those things, that's the key difference that I think, being a third generation, I'm actually fourth generation, I just counted wrong, Encinitas and feel is we have always worked together. Our community has always been strong. And you see this in the pandemic more than anything else is when communities have been able to come together. And we've really done this around food insecurity really well in North County. And we couldn't have done it without the Coastal Roots Farm. Let's just be frank, like that wouldn't have, any of that would have worked. But yeah, I wanted to get on the stop sign. And then, we got on the stop sign and they're like, you should run for council. I was asked 5 times. I never thought about it. And then I was at the Panikin one day. I was staring across the rail corridor at Pawleckee Central. And I had this thing of it, I looked at it and I was like, who's going to fight? Who's going to fight for the equity in our community? Who's going to fight for reducing greenhouse gas emissions? Who's going to fight for, communities with character? Who's going to do all that? And then I was like, guess I better step up, And so I ran for council, got on council, and then kind of similar thing happened with Assembly. I was looking around, the representative at the time did not pay very much attention to Encinitas at all. His focus on equity was lacking. His focus on environmentalism was lacking. And so much of what we do at the state level affects Encinitas. And I said, well, then I'll run for that. And, it was a crazy race and I won. And, I think we're put in places in life because we are meant to do good in those places. And so I think one of the things that's been very positive about being in the Assembly is I know I'm doing the work I'm meant to do. And I don't know if you know this about looking at my bio, but I used to consult with the World Health Organization on infectious diseases. Like I never thought that was going to be useful during a pandemic, but it's turned out to be incredibly useful just because the whole concept of how do you deal with pandemics, how do you deal with, distributing vaccinations, all of that has been incredibly useful. So I think I'm in the place where I'm supposed to be, and I get to work with amazing partners like you guys doing the amazing work to care for our community. And the more we collaborate, I feel like the more we're actually going to build us back better and stronger. Like people say that, but what that means is that we can't lose this community and this sharing and the lifting up your neighbor that we felt during this time. If we lose that in recovery, we've lost a huge asset that we've gained. So anyways, that's my very philosophical perspective on being in office and being able to make good change at this time.
That's really so interesting. I mean, there's a famous Jewish quote, or I don't know how famous it is, but there's a Jewish quote that comes to mind that when you were talking that says something like, if there is no leader, be the leader. And anyway, that really you just wanted to stop sign. You didn't plan on this whole trajectory, and now you're on the state assembly. And I think that really says a lot about you and about your commitment. So Kesha, of course, and none of us, everybody knows, or everybody should know that the pandemic, and Kesha was describing it, has affected this food system, just in substantial ways. Coastal Roots Farm has been so busy and so proud, I think, but so busy meeting that need. I mean, even just thinking back to the early days after the stay-at-home order and the 100 cars in line for the drive-up food stand, everybody from people who had been laid off, who couldn't afford fresh food, or seniors maybe who didn't want to go to the grocery store because they felt. And so I think we've all learned how fundamental a farm is, but then also the multiple effects on the food system. Of course, in California, we have vibrant food businesses, we have vibrant farms where food and farming are such the basis of our economy. We're in San Diego, we're proximate to the border. So, I mean, there's all these compounded issues that I'm sure you're thinking about with regard to the food system as a state policymaker. And I'm curious, among your many priorities, as you think about the food system in this moment in time, what are kind of your top 2 or 3 priorities as a policymaker with regard to the food system?
Yeah, I mean, I think with all things, COVID has shed a light on the inequities that had always existed in any system. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, it will shine a light on those inequities. And like a bright magnum spotlight, right? Like it's really harsh. And so, we've been able to work and coordinate with Coastal Roots Farms. We've been able to fund our food banks. But we're having this really important conversation on what does sustainable food production mean? Because one of the things that happened at the beginning of the pandemic, as you pointed out, is our food system, delivery system, was geared up for wholesale distribution. So when restaurants closed, we had food going to waste because we didn't have any way to pivot and be actually focused on individual household sales, right? You saw that with toilet paper, you saw that with milk, you saw all these different things. And I think we're having this conversation about how do we support small, sustainable farms? And actually did a food tour with the new chair of agriculture, Robert Rivas, who grew up as a child of a farm worker in the Salinas Valley. And, he came down to the district and we were looking at what do we need to do? I don't think we have the answers yet, but I think what we know is as we recover and as we change and as climate change happens, we can't keep doing things the way we've done them. So we're going to need to be more thoughtful in how do we have natural working lands? How do we encourage small, sustainable farming, which we have a lot of in San Diego, where other places in the state's very large industrial scale, we still have that small scale. So how do we support that? How do we ensure that we're supporting sustainability and not just food production, right? And how do we keep it local? So those are the issues we're grappling with. And I kind of think they all go back to my top 3 legislative priorities every year, which are sustainability, opportunity, and equality and equity. And when you hear those 3, you hear and all the things that I just talked about with sustainable small farms, what policies do we need around it? That's exactly it, right? And so we're still working on it. I don't know if we have all the answers yet, but it's great to have an agriculture chair in the assembly who agrees with us on that priority. And so we should be seeing some really good bills. I think there's 1 or 2 that we've already talked about. Everything, it's the sausage making part of politics, of legislation right now that's going on. Committees are starting, so we'll see where we end up.
Wow, sustainability, opportunity, and equity. That about sums up the need in the food system for sure. And I mean, it's almost like you could have predicted COVID, because I mean, I can't think of 3 more pressing issues that have just been more intensified during this time. And I guess with regard to all of those, but particularly to equity and opportunity, and really all of those, wanted to understand sort of where you see opportunity, but also women and communities of color. We know that they've been even more affected than others through this pandemic. We know that they take an exponentially large share of the frontline workers of the farming, the so-called essential workers, which we can debate another time how essential they are. I mean, how essential we treat them as. Yes. But they've also felt really the most brutal impacts of the pandemic. So I'm curious about how you see that, both what state interventions should we know about in terms of women and communities of color, maybe that might be being worked on, and also as a woman yourself, a leader, like how do you see yourself as a champion for those who are most affected and brutalized by this pandemic? Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing now exactly what you're intending, and it's sectorally impacted. So what we know is low-wage workers of color and women have been disproportionately laid off in the state.
It's mostly impacted. I just got actually a chart from our legislative analyst office yesterday, asked them to break it down by county and by sector. But it's largely in leisure, tourism, restaurants, and retail have taken the hardest hit. Some outdoor entertainment, that's not so much in my district. That's much more like if you look at Los Angeles, for example, they've taken a hard hit there too. And so one thing we also know from economists is a recession or a pandemic will always exacerbate any existing trends. So we had already existing trends against small brick and mortar retail with the, the rise of online shopping. And so with all this, we are looking at a couple things. So one, I have a particular bill. I can't remember the bill number. I'm sure I'll get a text right now from my staff to remind me of what the bill number is. But we're actually looking to identify those low wage workers of color and women in our district who have been displaced by the pandemic, have been unemployed for a longer time, and use our partnership with Mayor Costa's TCI department and retrain them for the jobs that we have in the area.
What does TCI stand for? Sorry,
TCI, Technology Center of Innovation. I'm not sure. I'm probably.
But there's a retraining function, or there's
a retraining function, and its sole goal is to work and partner with businesses so we can retrain workers for the jobs that we have in the area, right? And Miracosta is only one of 2 community colleges, I think, in Southern California that has it. So my bill will actually fund both Miracosta and Chaffey College up in San Bernardino. They also have a similar program to do this rapid retraining. And what we're trying to get money for, and it's early in the process, as I was saying, was actually most people who have been displaced have families. So it's not like they can take time off, do a training program for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and then go get a job. So we're trying to combine that with cooperative education, where they're actually getting paid internships so that they can earn money while they're getting retrained. So we're doing, I think there's several of us that have bills similar to that. We tried to do a bill last year, got to the governor's desk. He unfortunately vetoed it because he didn't like where it went in the community colleges. I keep reminding him, had he approved it, we'd be retraining all the workers right now. So we're proposing it.
But to rub it in, of course.
So we're proposing it for just my district here, which is Encinitas, Carlsbad, Oceanside Vista, and Camp Pendleton. But bigger than that, I'm not sure if you're aware, I became last month the assistant majority leader for policy and research because nerds win. And you can tell already from how I talk, like I'm a total nerd when it comes to this. And we're actually I'm having my team right now do 3 reports, one on learning loss mitigation that we've had in our educational sector. Most of my elementaries have been open to some degree in my district, but that's not true for vast swaths of the state. And we know that, if kids don't read by 3, the likelihood that they actually perform well in high school is low. We know if we lose them in the 4th to 6th grade ages, that we'll have a less skilled workforce when they graduate from high school. So we know these things. So we're looking at what are learning education, or what are learning acceleration strategies? And one of the things we already know from that study, it's just starting, but one of the things we have is if you look at disasters like Hurricane Katrina, if you don't deal with the social and emotional trauma, both by the educator and by the student, those learning acceleration strategies don't work. So what are strategies? We've just approved over $4 billion in the state for learning loss mitigation and learning acceleration strategies with summer schools and intervention and more summer schools. And that mostly has to be in person. And so, but if we're not dealing with the social emotional part, how are we doing that? The second project we're working on is exactly this reemployment. How do we look with an equity lens and a sustainability lens and say, who's been actually displaced? How do we retrain them? What are strategies so that they're not on permanent unemployment? Nobody wants that. And, we have, the Rescue Act that just came through Congress that's going to give us a lot of money. State has done small business grants. So we're looking at the most impacted businesses, and we know those businesses and the hardest hit zip codes are people of color and women. So there's business grant money for that. But what are the strategies on reemployment? And the third one we're doing is not really related to that, but I'll pitch it anyways, because I think it's really important, is when we talk about climate change, we often talk about the cost of the adaptation, for example, trenching the tracks or doing something like that. We talk about, we're gonna have to do something about the Bay Area and a lot of the infrastructure there. We compare it to the cost of doing nothing, which is not the accurate comparison. So we're doing a study on how do you properly assess the cost of delaying climate adaptation. And that is also with climate change going to be circled back. I swear there's a connection here with our food sourcing and how do we grow small, sustainable, local food sources in the event of climate change, because we're not comparing apples to apples. So those are the 3 projects we're working on. So I'm very happy to come back and talk to you once we have those initial results.
Very interesting. Yeah, the cost of doing nothing, that could be like really applied, in a number of areas, not just climate change. That'll be an interesting model. A question came in about if you had any comments about how the budget is doing in general in California with everything that California has faced this year. I know it's a long answer, but just the summary.
So if you had asked me a year ago, I would have been very pessimistic about what our budget outlook would be. The truth is we have a very robust yet inequitable economy, right? So our economy is still performing. So we thought we were going to go into this year as legislators facing huge budget cuts. But between the Biden administration's plans, as well as a lot of business still performing well, we've actually had a remarkable growth in entrepreneurship in the state. And I think that goes to our American entrepreneurial spirit, especially what we have here in California. So that has been very heartening to see. And I know you guys have your hub and you guys are probably spurring a lot of that innovation in the district. But when we look at that, we're actually not facing the cuts we thought we were facing. So that's why we were able to fund schools for reopening. That's why we were able to fund learning loss mitigation. That's why we put $2.1 billion in small business grants. We were able to do these things because we are in a robust financial position and we have an administration that's a partner for us at the federal level.
That's great. I mean, that's so heartening to hear. I could talk to you all day and I have so many questions. I know we do have an ambitious program, like Kesha said. So I guess I'll just ask one more question and encourage people to put questions in the chat, because I know you and your staff are very responsive and we can always pass questions along to you if we don't have time. Or sorry, not in the chat, in the Q&A. But, I was thinking about like our first meeting, which I think was a tour of the property with Jim and me. And I think, you had a neighbor who worked for us at the time. And then I was thinking about the very first events that Coastal Roots Farm had and seeing you there. So you've really been a longtime friend of the farm. And I just, on maybe a personal basis, even like you are 4th generation Encinesian, you're raising a family here, you like to cook, and you like to eat healthy. And I'm just like, what does having a farm here in this community like Coastal Roots Farm, but a community farm, mean to you as an Encinesian?
I think having Coastal Roots Farm here, I think the biggest thing is it reflects the sentiment of the community. Like there's a reason it's here. And there you have this reciprocal relationship. So I love urban gardening. Like my daughter and I my husband built me raised beds last year. I'm a little late to the pandemic garden thing. And so my daughter and I were just planting, corn salad. And I think we planted tomatoes, which I'm not sure it's the right time to plant tomatoes. So I think people in our community do that already, because we come from an horticultural background. Everybody who's been here has some connection with the land. And so when you have the farm, you have this, and especially with also the botanical gardens next door, we have this synergy. That's the word I'm looking for, where what you do reinforces what people do at home, and what we do at home reinforces Coastal Roots Farms. And I think that's really important. I didn't grow up with particularly in a family that valued healthy food. And so when I became a mother, that's why you see me, if you ever follow me on Facebook, I'm always cooking with my daughter, my son.
I do see that.
And so yeah, she made French macaroons for the first time. And they were like perfect. And I was like,
She's amazing.
yeah, I have no idea. She's 10. And I was like, I don't know. I never made them, and she made them perfectly. So, but prioritizing when I became a mother, making nutrition and homegrown food a part of our family and a part of what we are was really important to me personally. So ever since my kids were young, they've been in the kitchen with me, and they could say they like something, and we cook all sorts of meals together as a family. When I'm in Sacramento Monday through Thursday, so when I come home, we're always talking about, what are we going to cook together? What are we going to do this time together? And when we could go in our backyard or go to Coastal Roots Farm and get it locally, that's an activity for our family that brings us closer. So I think it's that synergy that it brings with all of us together.
Yeah, thank you. That's so reflective. And I think, that synergy extends like to neighbors in need. It extends to everybody. Everybody deserves this kind of life that you're describing. And so, wow, thank you so much, Assemblymember, for joining us for this portion. We hope that you'll stay, but we also know that, you may have a lot of other meetings to get to.
I might have a couple fires I have to put out with a couple things, but I'll stay on as long as I can.
We're really grateful. It's not easy to be a public servant. It's not easy, I'm sure, during a pandemic, and it's not easy to juggle everything that you're juggling. And we just couldn't be more grateful for your service and your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you
very much. And your friendship.
And we couldn't do it without you guys. We couldn't do it without us all coming together. And I think that's the thing when we leave this pandemic, I always say there's so much that we've lost, right? But we have to remember the silver lining, and the silver lining is you're there for the community, and I'm there for the community, and everybody who's joining us on this call, I'm sure, is there for the community. And that's the silver lining that we need to take with us forward. So thank you so much for having me.
You might have been a Jew, maybe in another life, because that reminds me of another Jewish saying that I'll finish with, which is, a community is too heavy to carry alone. That's one of my favorite sayings, as my colleagues know, but really, I think we felt that in the pandemic. So thank you so much. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Kesha. Thank you.
Thank you both so much, Assemblymember Boerner Horvath. It's been really such a treat to listen to you more intimately about your background, and especially so nice to hear what the farm has meant to you. I didn't realize you had such a long history in Encinitas, and we've been reflecting on that a lot during the pandemic. Our tagline is nourishing community. And so during this time, we've been talking about how that means way more than just feeding people's bellies, with nutritious food. But we do try to be that resource to the community, and we take feedback to heart, and we are trying to meet the needs. So thank you. We couldn't, none of this work would be in context, I think, without discussing policy and all of these things that trickle down. So really just the context that you've provided and the work that you're doing is just incredible. So thank you so much. So I want to transition over to Javier and Bernice with a little bit of context myself, which is that the farm grows 50,000 pounds of food for 30,000 individuals in need each year. And more than half of that food is donated. The other half is made available through sale at our Pay What You Can farm stand. So during this time of COVID, you might be surprised to hear that the farm has actually grown rather than closed our doors. Quite the opposite. We've been very lucky to be so busy, but it's also a reflection of the increased need. And we can share, I'm sure Javier will share more about that. But one of these areas of growth has been a brand new distribution relationship, and that is with the Iipay Nation of Santa Ysabel. So Bernice, if it's okay, I'd love to start with you just to introduce yourself and tell us about the Iipay Nation, and maybe just paint a little bit of a picture of what food access looks like. And then Javier, maybe you can sort of connect the dots about what the program looks like and how this relationship began.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bernice Piper. I am the chairwoman of the Iipay Nation of Santa Ysabel. I recently stepped in June and took over the former chairwoman's position. She stepped down due to medical reasons. So I've really had to step it up. I was the vice chair and now I am the chair. And so we already had a contract with Coastal Roots, that was happening. And they were coming out once a month, bringing in the food, and the community was distributing it out to some of the people. When the pandemic happened, though, the reservation went on a lockdown. So None of the elders were advised to leave their homes, whatever they needed. The staff here for the Iipay Nation would go and shop and bring them what they needed, their medication, because we don't have that many elders, and there are an important resource to us. So we believe that in order to protect them, they needed to stay in their homes and stay safe there, and so we actually opened a food bank here with staple foods like shelf food to help out the families. But when Coastal Roots came in with the produce, it helped a lot. And a lot of the families were just so grateful. And it opened up, new foods to them that they normally didn't eat because, some people never heard of, some type of radish or, these greens or whatever. And so, along with Coastal Roots distribution, they gave recipes. And a lot of people in the community were talking about, oh yeah, I made this and I made that. And it was really good, so it opened up like a more healthier way of eating the produce and sharing the ideas, because a lot of people here on the reservation are on social media. And really that was the only way for people to stay in contact with each other, because we were adamant that there was like nobody in and nobody out, except for the ones that worked off the reservation and the ones that had medical or dental. And then, we try to get all the supplies delivered here so nobody had to go into the cities. So that's, our connection to Coastal Roots and how they helped our community out here.
Maybe Bernice, I can ask you one more thing, just as a point of clarification. I've heard this concept of a food desert, and I know we've spoken. I just met somebody yesterday from Santa Ysabel and talking about how far they had to drive in order to get to a grocery store. So what would you say has been like, what's been the day-to-day prior to the pandemic and access to fresh foods, and how has it deepened or increased, become more challenging during this time?
So we do have a market that's about 7 miles down the road. The reservation is in the foothills of the Volcan Mountain. I don't know if you know that particular area. And the market provides food, but the prices are really high. So the next close city would be Ramona, and that's about 17 miles. And then, on into Escondido or Poway, depending on what tribal member. Some of them go as far as Temecula to buy food and to shop for, supplies. So it's usually, I noticed that people were leaving like once a month, and they would go and they would shop and they would get all their supplies and then come back and then, stay home and stay on the reservation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Javier, I know you've been working with different Native communities from, you've been in nonprofit 20 years. So I don't know if you have any reflections. I know that you've been to these distributions personally, and can you share a little bit maybe about the history of the land that Coastal Roots is on and why this means so much to you personally and to the team at large?
Sure, absolutely. And again, thank you everyone for being here, Tasha, and of course, Charlene and Kesha, and Bernice. Thank you so much for being here. And actually, Bernice and I know each other from way back to the Museum of Man, now the Museum of Us days, and some of the other work that she's involved with. And so it was a real pleasure to not just connect with the Iipay Nation of Santa Ysabel, but also to connect with you, Bernice. And I think a couple points therein, the land, we acknowledge the land that we sit here in Encinitas. We have a beautiful old growth live oak tree here, and knowing that this is the traditional lands here in North County of both Kumeyaay and Luiseño. And during this time, we've found that more and more people obviously are in need. And I think it wasn't as highlighted for us in terms of what that meant. A lot of times I think for people who are thinking of the local tribes and casinos, maybe not realizing that, many of the tribes, or a certain number, there's not gaming, there aren't these additional types of resources and funds coming in. and how important it is for as a community to work collectively. And I think one of the things that Coastal Roots has done really well through all of our food distributions are partnerships in community. So when it kind of came as a collaboration, this particular partnership, thanks to some initial support there from San Diego grant makers, now Catalyst, and the Food Funders Group, and the introductions to San Ysabel and also partnering with the American Indian Health Center, I think we're able to connect to new communities that I must say, like, our farm team is like deeply passionate about. I mean, I think what motivates the people who are actually growing the food is the fact of knowing who the food is going to. And so going out there and meeting the community members when we went out there for the first distributions and then some, and to really kind of find out the situation that's really been exacerbated during the pandemic, and how people, as you just heard Denise sharing right now, fresh produce, nothing that's canned, it's not canned, fresh produce that was actually harvested that day, reaching communities of need. And I think more than ever, when people need their immune systems up, having nutrient dense food, it's really a privilege and an honor, I feel, to be partnering. And, as Bernice and I have spoken, and other people there, both at Santa Ysabel and some of the other communities, is, we really see the farm as a place where people, we're looking forward, as part of our youth programming and youth groups that come from all over San Diego, partnering with the local tribes and communities for the youth to come here and experience the farm and actually see firsthand, along with the elders when it's safe for them to come, really also see where this food is coming from, and to welcome and come to the farm.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And maybe Javier, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more broadly about how the farm's work has changed during this time. I mentioned how our team has grown. Can you describe a little bit what has changed, what kinds of needs have percolated, or what has become our sort of narrowed focus, and how we've responded to that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier on, Kesha, not only did we not stop a day with our food distributions and donations, but we actually took on more. And it was because of the amazing work of our farm team and how they've been able to bring on our food forests and our farming areas, and how that's really grown. And we were coming into our largest harvest, which, perfectly dovetailed with the pandemic. But I think what hit early on was when everybody went into quarantine, we weren't able to bring on the volunteers that we normally would, who are truly, really essential for us being able to do the work that we're doing. So it was just all hands on, every single staff member, myself, Kesha, and everyone else, whether farming was your primary function with in the organization or not, you were planting, you were harvesting, you were working at the farm stand where we were seeing very high numbers of people coming through. And so not only do you have the volunteers on the production harvest side of things, also we were seeing these higher numbers, and we had to modify our whole system for the farm stand, which we have open on Thursdays 12 to 3 and Sundays 10 to 3, where it's a pay what you can model up to $30. People can choose how much they want to pay, and to have this access with dignity. They don't need to show any documentation. And it's really based on what they're able to pay. And we are having cars lined up. We had to modify our system. We need to keep people safe. We rather than shopping a regular farmer's market style, we were pre-bagging the produce that people were selecting off a list. They were coming to a point of sale that was being wiped down. So all that became very staff intensive. And thanks to some community support and some additional grant funding, we were able to actually bring on some farm stand associates that were able to help us along with, eventually, but to help us really meet people where they're at. And the stories that we were hearing on a regular basis, from one week to the next, where, 1 week, it's like, hey, I'm here shopping because I need food. And the next week, it might be, actually, I lost my job. And then the next week, a couple weeks later, and these are people that I personally met coming through our Pay What You Can farm stand. And it might be like, I actually lost my home and I'm living out of my car. So it became really heartfelt and impactful for us. We were taking surveys every week. We wanted to really get a sense of how this was really changing people's lives. We went from a model of seeing maybe 33%, a third of the people using our pay what you can model and relying on that discount or that free food, to more like 2/3. And so it was a radical shift, and it's a little microcosm of what was happening. But I think our ability to grow our own food, like going back to some of the stuff that Tasha was talking about, like we're our own closed loop system here. We're growing the food. The carbon footprint is almost zero because it's going from the fields, it's being washed to the farm stand, or going out for those distributions within a certain proximity. So being able to do all that and providing people at this time, and the pivots that we needed to make as a team to make sure that we were planting, harvesting, and distributing all those foods either on site or off in the community, again, which we never skipped a day. And I think it's really a testament of the passion and commitment of our team. And it wouldn't have been possible, without the very, generous support also of people in the community and some of the people who are watching our panel today.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Javier. And I think it's very typical that we're able to share concrete stories from the farm stand, and it's very easy to sort of see and notice. People can drive by. It's the only distribution that's open to the public in that nature. We're very lucky that people are willing and interested to share their stories. I think it at times can be harder to paint the picture of the impact of some of these other distributions. And Bernice, if you're willing, maybe you can recall a couple of stories of impact. We have done some evaluations in the community there, but if there's somebody that you're personally connected to, and you can sort of help paint the picture of how the food distribution has supported the community, whether it's trying a new recipe or whatever it may be, that you have come across and learned in your capacity.
Well, for me personally, I take a bag each time too, and I change my diet. I eat a lot more vegetables, and when that bag comes in, I consume the whole thing, because I've learned to cook things and freeze them and then bring them out for my lunch because I'm always on the go. And I've learned to eat better being in the position that I am in, and take care of my health, because I'm under a lot of stress with the work that I do day in and day out. And food really has made a difference and introduced me. I have families here on the reservation with like 5 or more kids, and they just say thank you. Every little bit helps because of the pandemic, and maybe somebody's out of a job or a job ended, and every little bit helps. And it's fresh organic food. We've never seen this before from any organization. It's always usually like canned or shelf food. And the diet is mostly the canned food that we get from donations. And so I know that a lot of people appreciate it, and when they come through, they say thank you, and there's smiles on their face. And I know it helps because we have we're so far out here, and we're so spread out, and I know our elders, they call me every time we have a distribution from Coastal Ritz, and they say thank you. And they're very grateful, and that somebody's willing to help take care of them like that during this pandemic. And wherever you're getting this stuff from, make sure you tell them thank you. That's what my elders tell me all the time. So I always tell Garth, because Garth is like my point of contact, and he's calling me, and he's how many volunteers we got this time? Maybe I need to bring some. And I tell him, oh no, we'll get people in the community to come, and everybody loves to help, especially when it's a donation like this. Our staff, sometimes they want to come down and help, but they have things going on. So if, they get a moment, they always come and check in, and you guys need help, because they want to see what's coming in. And it's just a real, during this time, it's really something that makes people feel good, the organic food. It really makes people feel good. And I'm learning a lot from them recipes. And, you know, me and my daughter, she actually grows a garden here for the community. It's a real small one and it's indigenous plants. So she's trying to carry on that knowledge of, you know, what she has been taught from myself and her dad and her grandparents and other people in the community. You know, we have one tribal council member who just a book of knowledge when it comes to the indigenous plant life out here. And so she's been working with her to try to, you know, bring some of the indigenous plants and start a community garden and then continue that knowledge with the youth. And they were just out here last weekend putting stuff together and getting the beds ready. And, you know, we've talked to Garth about it, and, you know, we're excited to show him when he comes back and, you know, what she has done with the youth. But she said some of the kids are really in their element, and they see that, you know, by being on Zoom and having to homeschool and things like that, just getting them out there, there were like 3 or 4 of them, you know, and they're really in their element. So hopefully if this lockdown lifts, we can get some of our youth out to the farm down there. And I still have to get out there and visit. It just seems like it's so far away from the mountains.
No, it's not far.
It's not that far, you know.
No, and I can't wait for the to come out. And you know, I just want to jump on to something you said there a moment ago, Bernice, in terms of like the partnership, because you know, without your leadership and your commitment to see this through, which I would say that's true for any of our community partner distribution, whether it's with Helping Hands Worldwide or you know, the clinic in Vista or senior centers, or I mean, all those different organizations and nonprofits that we partner with. It's not possible without those partnerships that we're making sure that we're reaching the people that need it most. And I would say, like, when we were like, when the transition was happening there with the food bank, and just to have your like level of like confidence to say, you know, Javier, I don't know it for going forward for these next coming months, how we're going to get it out there in the community, but we'll make it work. And I was like, wow, that's kind of how we roll, you know, like, let's just, you know, we're in it, we're committed. The impact is the priority, and we'll figure out the details. And, you know, just so everybody knows, like, Bernice was out there personally delivering as well, to see members of the community come out. So when the other distribution volunteers couldn't go out, you know, up these 2 valleys and some remote areas, you had family members coming in, just the way the community responded. And I think that's a testament to your leadership as well, to create that call to action. So, you know, I just want to thank you again, Bernice, for really, you know, and just, you know, I went back to my team when they were like, you know, the farm team, and everybody was passionate and excited about, you know, this distribution to San Ysabel. And we were like, gosh, is it going to work? Is it going to work? And so I got to go back to the team here at the farm and say, look, we're going to do it. We're going to make this work. Bernice said, we're going to make this work. And so the ripple effects are felt far and wide. And you know, and that's how, Charlene, what did you say a moment ago? You said community's too heavy to lift on your own, or something.
Wow,
like
Javier, you also might get an honorary status.
So
yeah, a community is too heavy to carry alone.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
well,
And
we got
we
you back
have
there too, Bernice.
Yeah, we have a good community out here, you know. One of the programs is to deliver hot meals to our seniors 3 days a week. And there's a driver that comes from Paula and brings those meals. And then when we have distribution, that driver will take all those bags and deliver them. And the elders normally don't come out. Some of them, they'll drive through, you know, if the roads are good, but it's been snowing out here and raining pretty good.
Wow.
So a lot of times people won't come out because they get stuck going back up their roads. It's dirt roads. And so they just stay home, and then we send somebody with a 4x4 up that road, you know, here's your food. And then we have some elders that some of them don't have vehicles. So, you know, we make sure they get their share of that distribution, because we don't want to leave anybody out, you know. And I just start making phone calls. Hey, you know, we're here. Send one of your kids over, or send your daughter-in-law, or, you know, and have them pick up for you guys so that, you know, you guys will be all included in it. And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we have a lot of people that work. So, you know, they're at work, they can't make it over to get it, and we'll hold it here at the building for them. Or, you know, most of the time I just take it and we deliver it to them and we drop it off on their porch, you know, and
Bernice,
somebody.
there were two questions that came in that I'm hoping you can answer just in the last couple of minutes here. Sylvia wanted to know how many tribal members are living in the community. And then as a second question from Amanda, are any school meals making it into the community?
Oh, yes, the school does deliver meals, I believe, to the families, and they usually have a center point where they meet, and then, you know, the families will come pick it up. If not, I know the girl who delivers them, and she usually delivers it to the family if they can't get it. And then we have over 935 tribal members, but we have about 350 here on the reservation, and we're not one land base. We have 3 tracts. So we have one tract that's off of 79, and then we have 2 off of Mesa Grande Road, which is more rural than where we're at on tract 3. And, you know, one of our like road bumps is like, there's not always cell service or internet. So, you know, to be able to communicate that way, you know, it's important that I have a contact list, and then I just start calling those people that I have, you know, and I ask them, is it okay to call you when we have things so that you can send somebody over? And they're like, most definitely. But for the most part, our staff here at Iipay Nation, and we have a disaster preparedness person, Joe, and then we have an EPA department, and we have a social service department. So a lot of that staff, they'll make sure that the tribal members are taken care of, and you know, things are delivered to them as they, some are tribal members and some are not, but mostly everybody lives in this area. So if they're going that way, they will take it to them. It's not an issue of getting it to the homes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of infrastructure just among community members and community support. And I hate to cut this short because I'm so grateful to connect with you face to face, Bernice. We've been hearing about this distribution, and it's not the area that I'm involved with at the farm, but I can tell you that our whole team is so grateful and so inspired to be, you know, it gives us purpose for the work that we're doing, reaching this community and the others that we serve as well. So before Javier, I wanted to ask you one question that came in from Anne Hunter Wellborn. So thank you, Anne, for this question. She says, this might be obvious, but do we need donations specifically to keep this distribution going? And just to describe that need, if you can, super briefly, and then we have to celebrate you. We just have to, Javier. So
yeah, don't plot that we're not going to get out of celebrating. So
thank you for the question, Anne, and we absolutely do. The program was actually funded through December, so we're actually seeking support for 2021. So I will send you an email with the specifics of what that is, but we do have that. And if anybody's interested in supporting, it is a very specific line item that people can support that donation, that distribution for the year. Absolutely. As well as part of that is, you know, we're also in the throes of trying to get the final funding for a new distribution vehicle that's better suited to making those drives out to Santa Ysabel and other food distribution donations. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll put my email and cell phone in the chat, and I'd be more than happy. But yes, that is a program that we are seeking funding.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And there were a couple more questions, and I'll save them. I'm sure there's a way to go into the back end of Zoom, and so we do want to connect with all of you. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we just can't finish this program without a sincere congratulations to Javier. And we have a very short video, Javier. I hope you're not too embarrassed. But for those who logged on a little bit late, Javier was a recent recipient of the 2021 Fran Alshire Award. I hope it's clear, I know it's clear with one conversation with Javier why that might be for his leadership, but Javier, just want to share the screen here. I'll share some audio with just a few familiar faces. So I'll say a thank you now, but we'll hop back on after the video shows. So.
Oh no. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Adam McCurdy, and I am the Director of Farm Production here at Coastal Roots Farm. And I have the great honor of working alongside and under the tutelage of Senor Javier Guerrero. And I just can't say enough about the amazing leadership that Javier brings to the farm every single day. And what it takes to be a fine leader is so all-encompassing. What you see behind me is an all-encompassing, beautiful situation of the ocean and greenhouses and a forest and trees and crops growing underneath the canopy of those trees. And that's exactly what it takes. Standing on the summit view, going into the weeds as Javier is willing to and able to do at all times, to pan out and then to share with others. I'm so proud of Javier for receiving this award, and I couldn't be more thankful to be working alongside him to build this organization and build this community and to share with the community that we have and that we're building upon. So thank you, Javier, so much for all that you do. And that's it. So proud of you and so thankful to be working along your side.
Congratulations, Javier. You are a visionary leader who makes a huge difference in our community. As the ED at the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, you inspired all of us, your team, your board, and the San Diego nonprofit community to embrace your passion for educating underserved children and families. You built the museum from an empty building into an amazing indoor and outdoor venue filled with educational wonder. You grew the membership from 11,000 annual attendance at the old location to over 175,000 a year attendance, plus a mobile program in all the Escondido schools and other venues. You are exuberant, you are captivating, you are so much fun to work with. We had such funny times and managed to get into just a little bit of mischief here and there. I treasure you and your family. I applaud your accomplishments. Está como un hijo. Congratulations, Javier.
Hey, little brother. I am so proud of you. It is very befitting that you're receiving this recognition and this award. You have always had a heart of gold, always have cared for the people around you and for the environment and the earth around you, and you are in the right place at the right time. You're doing the right kind of work at Coastal Roots Farm on making a difference. As your sister, as a community leader, and as a community member, I'm really proud to have you here in San Diego. Estoy muy orgullosa de ti, hermano mío, but just remember, I'm always the big sister.
All right. Thank you all for hanging on. Javier, congratulations.
Wow, that was over the top.
Congratulations, Javier. We're so proud of you.
Thank you so
proud
much.
of
That
you
was
and
awesome.
grateful.
Lots of love in the chat for all of you. Lots of nice things, Bernice, about what you had to say. Javier, lots of notes, people congratulating you. Just want to thank all of you, Assembymember, Boerner, Horvath, Bernice, Javier, Charlene, thank you so, so much. And please feel free to reach out with any questions, everybody who attended, and you know where to find us. I'll put my email in the chat as well. Javier had put his, and we'll definitely follow up via email as well. So thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
before we see
Thank you, Kesha. Congratulations.
so much.
Tell
That
your
was
friends
awesome.
about supporting the farm, because who wouldn't want to support that video guy star? You need to do another run up that hill. That's great.
I know, it's kind of slow. I think I needed to hit that a little faster.
I love
Felt
it.
higher on the way up, didn't it? In the video, it looks just kind of cute.
Thank you, Javier.
No, thank you all. Thank you, Charlene, Bernice, Tasha, Kesha. Thank you.
Good night. Good
Have a
afternoon.
good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thanks, Bernice. Bye.